September 2018 at Photokina, when Leica, Panasonic and Sigma announced the L-mount alliance, Leica also announced and had a prototype on display of their new S3 medium format DSLR. That's right, it's a DSLR, traditional optical viewfinder. A year later, October 2019, I was in Wetzlar for the launch of the SL2. There wasn't one on display, but I did get to speak to some people who had had a chance to shoot with it over the previous 13 months. Now, September 2020, 2 years after it went on display as a prototype at Photokina, I finally have one in to test out. I've been waiting so long for this, I'm not even gonna run through all of the specs now. Let's do all of that and comparing it to everything else on the market at the end. Let's head out and shoot. First thing though, I need to locate a compact flash card for this camera. Hey folks, now I have to acknowledge I only had 6 short days with this camera system and only the 24mm and the 100mm lenses to shoot with. That's not enough time or a complete enough kit to do any kind of a comprehensive test on any camera system, let alone a flagship medium format system, but that's what I had and that's what I'm going to be doing. So first off, I did a bunch of different portrait shoots with Yasmin. I've been shooting lots with Yasmin lately. She's great fun, and if you head on over to artnudeportraiture.com, sign up to the mailing list, you'll get a free start to finish photo shoot with her. And I went to Dumbo to shoot the classic shot back onto Manhattan to do some long exposures, as well as doing some personal shooting that isn't in this video. Now, I'm not even going to pretend to be unbiased in this video. I'm a DSLR user, a medium format lover, a Leica M user as well, and I recently sold off my Nikon kit, so I'm considering whether this would work for my style of shooting. I am going to make sample RAW files available to you, so check the links below to download them. Okay folks, so that 6 days flew by really quickly, and look, like I said, it's not enough time to do any kind of a comprehensive test. I would really love to have had this for a month and be traveling the world and be able to put it through its paces practically, but you know the terms of this review, and that's what it's going to be. Now, a little bit of background on this guy in case you weren't aware that Leica made a medium format camera. So, back in 1997, Leica released the S1, and it was kind of a unique studio camera, or more of a scanner really, that had a 26 megapixel square sensor. It cost $21,500 back in 1997 and was really limited application for museums and that kind of thing. The S2 came out in 2008. It was using a 30 by 45 millimeter 37 megapixel CCD sensor manufactured by Kodak. That cost around $22,000. Flash forward, and there was a couple of half steps in between, but the most recent before this was the Type 007. That came out with a 37.5 megapixel CMOS sensor, and it sold for around 20 grand when that released in 2015. Now this guy, the S3, keeps the ergonomics basically the same outward look as the Type 007 and the one before that, the 006. Still has the 30 by 45 millimeter sensor, so obviously we're getting the same lens range. It is using a brand new 64 megapixel CMOS sensor. It has DCI 4K, new processor, 15 stops of dynamic range, LEMO connectors, if you don't know what they are, really high-end, almost unbreakable connectors instead of your traditional ones. And the price is now $19,000 for the body only. Now, one thing about the mount and lenses that I should acknowledge, the S series is unique in that it supports traditional lenses, focal plane shutter, and a central shutter range of lenses. So you can get, in a lot of the focal lengths, like 100mm, you can get the standard lens that then uses the shutter in the camera, or you can get a central shutter version of the lens, which costs more and gives you all of the benefits that come with that. If you're not familiar with all of that, give it a quick search. There are some real advantages, and it's something that the Hasselblad XCD lenses have as well. Now, whilst I have been looking at this in terms of my own use cases and how I would use a camera like this, it's inevitable, I think it's how the brain works, that I have been comparing it, in my mind at least, to other things that are on the market that would be, fair and comparable options. And that pretty much means other medium format cameras. Yes, there are 35mm cameras out there that have a similar resolution to this sensor, but in my mind, they're really not a truly comparable option. If you were going to buy one of these, you wouldn't be also considering an A7R4 instead of it. So, as I went through the list of different points, and how it compared to other things on the market, honestly, it got kind of conflicting and it wasn't that black and white. First of all, let's get it out of the way. The price, $19,000 is a hell of a lot of money in anyone's language. There's no getting around that. That said, inflation adjusted, the S1 launching in whenever it was, 1997, that has a today value of $35,000. The S2 was inflation adjusted $27,000, the Type 007, $22,000, and now this is coming out at $19,000. So at least it's heading in the right direction, right? And it goes without saying that that price point, body alone, puts this out of the consideration of 99% of photographers at least. 99% of professional working full-time photographers, and probably 99.99% of photographers period in the world. And it's also true that cameras like the Fuji GFX range, and to a lesser extent the Hasselblad X series, have brought cheaper medium format options and bringing a lot of things under the $10,000 price point now that you have to consider. On the flip side, there are other medium format digital cameras on the market that still, like the Hasselblad H series and the Phase 1 cameras, that you're talking $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a body only. So there's levels to everything, and this is actually kind of in the midpoint. It's not at the high end once you're looking at medium format. It's also worth noting that there are thousands, tens of thousands of photographers around the world who are happy to spend $7,000 to $8,000 on a small manual focus rangefinder M Leica camera. So $18,000, $19,000 for a medium format autofocus camera isn't necessarily out of the realm of what's possible for people with a bigger budget. Now, let's get on to the specifics about the camera. The sensor, as far as I know, is proprietary, not available in any other camera, and pretty much made for them. I don't know that specifically, but you tell me. Do you know of any other 64 megapixel, 30 by 45 millimeter sensor out there? I don't think anyone else is using something like that. So I think it's proprietary, and it is beautiful. We'll get to image quality in a second. In terms of the sensor size, yes, it's medium format because it's bigger than 35mm, but it's baby medium format, in the same ballpark in terms of surface area as the Fujifilm medium formats or the Hasselblad 50 megapixel sensors. Much smaller than, say, the Hasselblad 100 megapixel or the King of the Hill, the Phase 1 sensors are significantly bigger than the sensor in this or the others, as I said. In terms of image quality, honestly, I think it's astounding, and it's really frustrating because for me, that's one of the two main criteria that I look at for a camera. The files are really, really, really beautiful. You can push them, pull them, the colors. I think the colors coming off this are the nicest of any camera I've ever used, and the image quality overall is the nicest of any camera I've ever used. And that's coming from someone who's used all kinds of different systems and has had the chance to test out so many more cameras than I've ever owned. Still, the image quality coming off this is really something else. And for me, the second most important thing, or maybe equal first, is the ergonomics, how it is in the hand and how enjoyable it is to actually shoot. And again, as someone who's owned film and digital, medium format, and every basic sensor size and camera body type that has been made, this is the best built and best ergonomics of any camera I've ever used. It is heavy though, I'll say that. So if you don't want to be carrying a heavy system around, just discount it. It is a heavy setup, but the grip feels like they took a mold of my hand and made it for it. It just feels amazing, and the build and finishing of everything feels absolutely a level above everything else. Every button, the door cover for the cards, the battery release compartment, every section of it feels absolutely bulletproof and perfectly made, perfectly refined. And in that sense, whilst this is significantly more expensive than, say, a GFX 100, it's infinitely better refined and more ergonomic than a camera like that as well. Still, it is what it is. So you'll note there that my two top criteria have a big green tick next to them: image quality and handling and ergonomics. That's true. But there are some downsides, unfortunately. Firstly, this is still using compact flash and SD cards. It's 2020. I mean, I realize this was announced a couple of years ago, but there are so many more advanced formats out there now. I really do not miss compact flash cards and the propensity for bent pins, not even to mention that the format just doesn't have the read-write potential of every other format that's come since. Also, the rear screen, whilst it's strong and it's reasonably bright, it's a 921K 3-inch fixed non-touchscreen. That's what the 2007 Nikon D3 was using. Come on. And that's just like not a cheap shot at Leica. They are actually known for and generally ahead of the pack and pioneers in astonishing EVFs and excellent, excellent rear screens. Take, for example, the SL2. I made a note of it here. It's using a 2.1 megapixel, 3.2-inch touch rear screen, and that came out last year. Why this is using such old tech for the rear screen is beyond me. It has so much detail in the files. Trying to take a look at them in the field, it's just a real missed opportunity in my mind. In terms of the speed, it manages 3 frames a second. Now, I'm not, some kid who wants everything to do 20 frames a second or something like that. And for what I would use this camera for, 3 frames a second is enough. For what most people, I imagine, would use a camera like this for, it's also enough. But you do have things like the GFX 100 that's managing to push around 102 megapixel files at 5 frames a second using SD cards. So if the processor is up for it, it would have been nice to see the potential there. It's a DSLR after all. They do have a history of, you can manufacture a DSLR to shoot at faster than 3 frames a second. It's more to do with how fast you can move the data around. And that may be coming back to the compact flash card, I don't know. But again, I think a bit of a missed opportunity. Now, having said that, I do appreciate the fact that unlike some other brands or every other brand that it likes to put in, we go to 1 million ISO, or we do this or we do that, and they're really just looking for the headline of some groundbreaking number. Leica don't do that, and in my experience generally throughout the brand, whilst it is a luxury product, they are focusing on the user experience, and it really shines through when you're using it in the field. I think that's the case here as well. It'll do the 3 frames a second all day, every day, and never miss a beat, and it just works. But it doesn't have, the potential to do a really fast burst that would have been good for a headline. Now, the autofocus. This is still using a single central point autofocus system, which is accurate. It works quite well for the portraits I was doing with Yasmin and for the landscapes. It worked well. I was able to focus through a couple of filters without much of a problem as well. I didn't find, even using the 100mm at f2, that I was missing the eye regularly when focusing and recomposing. But it is now in a market that's competing with cameras like the GFX 100 that have really advanced autofocus, the ability to track an eye autofocus and all of that good stuff, as well as stabilization and whatnot. And other systems like, say, the Phase 1 that have a single point autofocus system also have a 3D sensor that when you focus and then recompose, it can tell from the distance you focused in the lens you're using where your focus point was. So as you recompose, it makes a slight adjustment so that point remains in focus. This doesn't have that. So shooting really fast aperture lenses, up close as that sensor plane is moving around, there is a real potential for misfocus. And it just means if you're shooting on a tripod or something in studio, unless you want your model's face in the center of every frame, you're going to have to focus and recompose all the time to get every single kind of shot if you want the eye sharp. For me, that's enough to be almost a deal breaker. And lastly, and this one surprised me, I found the metering, and it was through filters, so maybe I'm hitting the filter because it's their fault. I found the metering inconsistent when I was shooting at Dumbo between shots without me moving anything, with only 20 seconds between shots. The light hadn't adjusted much. The metering was jumping around significantly. And yes, it was through filters, but I tried all of the different metering modes. It was better in live view, but still inconsistent, through the eye more so. And that shouldn't be the case on a camera like this. So with all of that out there, where does this leave me? As I said, my highest priority things that I would be looking at if I were to drop this kind of money on a system, it actually does check off. If money were no object, I would get it. I do love shooting with this camera, and I do love the results despite it being limited in some features. It's like buying an old, like a brand new generation sports car that has a manual transmission and no air conditioning, but it just grips the road great. It's some compromises, but what you get works great. The enjoyment and the image quality are there. However, it couldn't cover all of my use cases, which means I would be shooting at least a second system to do faster moving things, or things where I need more responsive autofocus or reliable metering. And on my budget, I just can't justify a system like this plus another system, which is a shame, because honestly, if they had implemented a more advanced autofocus system, if they had used faster card formats, if they had a much better rear screen on this thing, and then either a better metering module, or they fix the software, whatever is the issue there, this honestly could have been a grail camera for me. I was so pumped to see this announced in 2018. The Type 007 I already really loved in the hand. I just hoped that they would put, I don't know, a 9-point autofocus system or something in there and update a couple more things. The new sensor would have pretty much done it for me. But note, this camera is sold out all around the world. There's waiting lists at every Leica boutique for this. People are still buying them. Whilst it may not suit you, and I'm not sure that it suits me, there are people definitely keen to buy this. So who are they and why are they getting it? Well, who are they? I'm guessing it's people who have tastes like me but a much bigger budget, or people who are already in the system. If you have these amazing lenses, and they are great, whether you're getting central shutter or the traditional lenses, none of them are focused by wire. They're all traditional, big-ass, high-resolving, beautiful lenses. The early generation had some issues. The motor had an issue which has been resolved, and the new ones don't have that problem. But they are beautiful, and Leica offer a really, do you want to say generous, a really compelling upgrade path for people who are in the system to upgrade to the latest body. So someone who has a good condition 007 could be looking at like a $10,000 to $11,000 credit towards upgrading to a body like this. So for them who want the extra resolution and a few extra features, who already have an investment in the glass and see the value in a system like this, then it's a no-brainer that a lot of those will be looking to upgrade. But tell me, what do you think about this as a system? Is it something that, money no object, you would be shooting for? Or that's maybe a nice conversation to have. If you did have a budget no limit system, you can just choose whatever you wanted to shoot with, what would it be? That's kind of nice to dream now and again, huh? But for now, unfortunately, I need to box this one up and send it back to Leica USA. I've been pestering them every month for about 1.5 years to get this loaner in, so big thanks to them for loaning this to me. And I sincerely hope that I can get this in for a much longer review once travel resumes and I can put this through its paces out in the field. Thanks guys, check the links below to see the sample files, and I'll see you soon.